try to make sense of this all is Seth Denson. He's the co-founder and chief strategist at GDP Advisors insurance agency. Seth, it's good to have you with us. Look, a much different economic reality for President Trump as he looks to campaign later today in New Hampshire is certainly much different than when he was campaigning back in 2016. How does the president get us out of what are these concerning signs with the economy?
Well, I think you're already seeing the president start to soften on his position with China and tweets even overnight where he's supporting President Xi and perhaps the fight against democracy in Hong Kong and even signaling a possible meeting. And we know that this president's MO is when things start to go really bad, let's just get in front of people. That's the way he's run his business, and that's the way he's running the White House. So I think the president's recognizing that the luxury of a four-year term is quickly coming to an end, and that he's got to start thinking differently about how he's approaching the marketplace. He's still got some time, but that time is going to wind down pretty quickly.
What is the White House's strategy for dealing with this volatility, dealing with this uncertainty? Because really all we've heard from the president has been attacking his own Fed chair, somebody who he appointed under 2 years ago, Seth.
Well, you know, the president has never been shy about attacking really anybody that's part of either his administration or any part of the federal government. So I wouldn't expect that would change. You know, the president has long since taken the position that the interest rates were risen too fast or too quickly over the last year, and that maybe the economy would be in a better position. He's trying to put pressure on Fed Chair Powell. And as we've talked about on your show a couple of times, I think we'll see another rate cut before the end of the year. But I think Fed Chair Powell has actually played his cards right in saying we're going to hold back on the rate cuts to see if we need a volatility buffer in the marketplace. And so, you know, the president's going to continue to push where he thinks he can to get some political points and try to move the market and even move his administration or those in the federal government to do what he thinks needs to be done.
Seth, I think there are real concerns, right, in terms of what can be done if we do potentially see another recession. And of course, the recession word entering our rhetoric today because we did see the yield curve invert yesterday for the first time since 2007. And historically, that has been a warning sign that a recession is on the horizon about a year and a half to 2 years out. And so if a recession does hit, I think the concern is that certainly here in the U.S., rates are already low. Abroad, I mean, you know, what does Europe and Japan really have left to try to boost its economies over there after its stimulus measures didn't really work as they were intended after the financial crisis roughly a decade ago?
Well, listen, you know, the United States is in a better position economically than I think the rest of the world. The United States has had the advantage of maybe some overtime game here that the rest of the world hasn't had, and so I think we're in a better position. I want to draw a contrast, though, to what we saw in '08, which is we had the housing crisis, we had the mortgage bubble burst, and unlike in '08, we're not really seeing a specific sector of the marketplace doing poorly. And so I think consumer confidence is still high. I think the president and the White House and the entire administration has a lot of arrows in their quiver from a perspective of trade deals. We've got to look beyond China for trade. I think the president's trying to work on that. You've got to look at things like we do still have some value in some potential interest rate cuts. I mean, we could bring them back down to levels where they were in 2016. That would help the marketplace. I think we need to be cautious, though, not to move too quickly or too rapidly. The market is in a place of volatility right now, and a lot of times maybe we talk about it a little too much. And you've got companies like even GM and Ford that are starting to hoard cash in fears of a recession. Well, that could lead us to a recession. So I think we need to all just kind of take a step back, take a deep breath, realize that the United States economy is still in a better place than the world economy. I personally don't believe we're headed into a recession, and I think we still have some weaponry, so to speak, to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Seth, what's the data that is telling you that we are not headed for a recession?
Well, consumer confidence is obviously a big part of that. You know, I woke up this morning saying TGIW, right? Thank God for Walmart, or thank God it's Walmart. You know, you've got consumer confidence at an all-time high. You've got unemployment still in a good position. I look at the barometer of the rest of the world and say, how's the United States, you know, kind of standing up against that? no question, I think we're going to see a slowdown. I think that any economist that tells you you're not going to see a slowdown is off the rocker a bit. But I don't see that we're in a position like we were in '08, where we had the housing bubble burst, and then everybody looked around and said, what in the world just happened over the last decade?
Seth, I want to talk to this idea of tariffs earlier this week, and President Trump surprising many people just a couple of days ago, saying that these 10% tariffs on $300 billion worth of goods, a lot of consumer goods, consumer electronics, a portion of those items will be excluded until after companies like Best Buy and other retailers have purchased these goods for the holiday season, essentially blinking in two different ways. One, acknowledging that these do lead to higher prices for companies here in the U.S. and for consumers, and then two, just with the idea of announcing these tariffs and then delaying them. How does that change President Trump's position for negotiating?
Well, again, we're starting to get into politics season, and I think the president recognizes that. The last thing he's got one more Christmas, really, before he goes into election time. So, you know, I think the president was recognizing that and saying, hey, listen, let's not put a sour taste in the mouth of consumers and American public before we go into that. Listen, as you think about trade talks, you've got this throttle, and I think the president has started out with this full throttle approach to China and saying, we have this and we're gonna press it, and then he's starting to let off a little bit. I think as time goes on and we start to see what occurs towards the end of this year and in the beginning of next year, we might see a different change in tone. Americans have a short-term memory. The president recognizes that. And if he can deliver on the short term, I think he's also recognized that maybe he can win the long-term game, which is the 2020 election.
Seth, very quickly, are you taking any money out of this market right now?
No, I'm doubling down, man. Stocks are on sale today. There's an old saying that my daddy used to say, that the only people get hurt on the roller coaster, people that jump off in the middle of the ride. If you're retiring tomorrow, you've got things to be concerned about. The market is still up 13% year to date. We just got some stocks on sale yesterday, and I'm going to take advantage of that.
Seth, I agree with your dad. Do not jump off a roller coaster mid-ride, please.
10% off. Seth Denson, he's the co-founder and chief strategist at GDP Advisors. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Seth.